The email hit my inbox like a lightning bolt, shaking my whole damn world. Subtactic vision agreement. My app name, final offer. My fingers trembled as I clicked it open. Inside, a number glowed on the screen. A number so massive, so beyond anything I'd ever imagined, it made my eyes water. 8 figures. Not just 7, not 6, 8. My app. The one she said was a stupid hobby. The one she mocked me for staying up all night coding. The one she swore would never amount to anything. My ex, Sarah. Her words echoed in my head, loud and clear, like she was standing right behind me. You'd be nothing without me, Mark. Absolutely nothing. A nobody. A loser with a silly little project that goes nowhere. That was 2 years ago. The day she walked out, the day my life felt like it ended. I remember staring at the blank wall of my tiny apartment, feeling a cold dread that settled deep in my bones. She was right, I thought then. She had always been the strong one, the charismatic one, the one who made things happen. I was just a quiet guy who liked computers. Without her, what was I? A shell, a ghost. But now, this email. This number. It was so big it felt like a joke, a prank. I checked the sender name. A prestigious venture capital firm, no joke. This was real. This was happening. I stood up from my worn office chair, the springs creaking under my weight. My apartment, still small, still cluttered with takeout containers and coffee cups, suddenly felt different. It felt like a launching pad. Not a prison. My heart hammered in my chest, not with joy, not yet. With a strange mix of disbelief and a deep, gnawing ache. The ache wasn't about the money, it was about her words. They had been a poison, seeping into my soul for so long, making me doubt every decision, every late night, every line of code. They had been the fuel too, in a twisted way. Every time I wanted to give up, her voice would whisper, "You are nothing." And something in me, some small, defiant spark would ignite. I would grit my teeth and type faster, think harder, push further. I walked over to the window, peering out at the familiar cityscape. The buildings looked the same, the cars zoomed by, the people below hurried along their way, oblivious. But my world had just tilted on its axis. A massive weight had been lifted, but a ghost still lingered. The ghost of Sarah. The ghost of her biting remarks, her condescending smiles, her endless dismissal. She wasn't just my ex. She was the architect of my deepest insecurities. For years I had believed her. I had allowed her to define me. She always had a way of cutting me down, subtle at first, then more blatant as our relationship went on. "Oh, that's sweet, Mark," she'd say, when I showed her a new feature I'd been working on. "But who's going to use it, really? Or, you spend so much time on that silly screen. Don't you think you should focus on a real job?" A real job. My app was my real job. It was my passion, my escape. It was the one thing that felt truly mine, even when she tried to claim credit for inspiring it, or tried to make me feel guilty for pursuing it. I remember one night early in our relationship, when I first told her about my idea. It was for an app that helped people connect, based on very niche hobbies, something that wasn't really out there yet. I was so excited, my eyes probably shining. She listened, nodded, and then said, Sounds a bit like a glorified forum, doesn't it? But, if it makes you happy, go for it." It wasn't outright dismissal, but it wasn't encouragement either. It was a subtle belittling, a way of implying it was childish. As the years went by, Her comments grew sharper, more pointed, especially when I started making a little money, just enough to cover my server costs. "Look at you, big shot," she'd sneer, "making a few bucks online. Still not enough to take me to that fancy restaurant though, is it?" She always had to diminish it, to make it seem insignificant compared to her own ambitions, her own ideas of success. And then the big one. The fight that ended it all. It wasn't even about the app directly. Not really. It was about my perceived lack of ambition, my quiet nature, my inability to fit into her perfectly manicured world. We were arguing about something trivial. A party I didn't want to go to. A social obligation that felt draining. And then it spiraled, as arguments often do, into a full-blown assault on my character. "You are just so complacent, Mark," she screamed, her face red, her hands gesturing wildly. "You have no drive. You just sit there with your stupid laptop, tinkering with your little toy. You'll never be anything more than you are right now. You are afraid of the world. You'd be nothing without me." Absolutely nothing. I stood there stunned into silence. Her words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Nothing. It echoed in my mind for weeks, months. It became my mantra, my curse. It became the reason I worked so hard, even when I felt like giving up, to prove her wrong. Not just to myself, but to that voice in my head that sounded exactly like hers. Now, looking at this email, the ultimate proof, I felt a flicker of vindication, a small tentative flame of triumph. But it was quickly overshadowed by something else, a sadness. A realization that no amount of money could erase the years of doubt she had sown. No financial success could instantly heal the scars she had left on my self-worth. The money was great, mind-blowing even. It meant freedom, security, possibilities I'd never dreamed of. But the victory felt hollow, tinged with a familiar pain. I hadn't just built an app. I had built myself back up from the ground, brick by painful brick, each one laid over her cruel words. And even now, standing on top of this mountain of success, those words still whispered in the wind. What would she say now? What would she do? Would she even remember me? Would she know? The thought sent a jolt through me. Part of me, the old, insecure me, desperately wanted her to know, to see what I had become, to regret her words. But another part, the part that had slowly started to heal, wondered if it even mattered. Did her opinion still hold power over me? I had to figure that out, and quickly. Because this email, this new reality, was about to change everything. This isn't just a story about money. It's a story about silence, about whispers, about the kind of emotional abuse that cuts deeper than any physical blow. It's about finding your worth when someone tells you you have none. And it's about what happens when you finally prove them wrong. The surprising truth is, it's not always pure joy. It's complicated, and it's just beginning. Before Sarah, my life was pretty simple. I was a computer science major, quiet, loved spending hours lost in lines of code, building little things that mostly just lived on my hard drive. My biggest ambition was to create something useful, something that might make a tiny difference. I wasn't chasing fame or fortune. I was chasing curiosity. Then I met Sarah at a university social mixer. She was like a supernova. Bright, loud, magnetic. She had this incredible laugh that filled the room, and eyes that sparkled with ambition. She was studying business, always talking about big deals, networking, making connections. We were total opposites. And for some reason, she was drawn to me. I guess the quiet programmer was a novelty. Our first few months were a whirlwind. She pulled me out of my shell, made me go to parties, introduced me to people. I felt like I was finally experiencing life beyond my screen. I was happy, genuinely happy. She made me feel seen, even if it was a different kind of scene than I was used to. It was during this time that the idea for HobbyLink started to form. I'd always noticed how hard it was for people with really specific interests, like collecting rare stamps, or competitive cheese rolling, or even just unusual coding languages, to find others who shared their passion. Most social media was too broad. So I thought, what if there was an app specifically designed to connect people, based on extremely niche hobbies, a place where you could find your tribe no matter how obscure your interests. I remember pitching it to Sarah one evening, over lukewarm pizza in my dorm room. I was sketching wireframes on a napkin, my voice a bit shaky with excitement. It's not just a forum, I explained. It's about discovery. You enter your interest, and it matches you with others nearby, or even creates interest groups for meetups, online discussions. It could be huge for communities that feel isolated. She listened, chewing slowly. Then she gave me that half smile. Cute, Mark. Really cute. It sounds a bit like an online dating app for nerds though, doesn't it? Are there really enough people who collect antique thimbles to make a market out of it? Her words pricked at my enthusiasm, but I brushed it off. She was a business student. She was just being practical, I told myself. She didn't understand the passion, the community aspect. So I kept working on it. Late nights, fueled by instant coffee and the dream of connecting people. I poured all my free time into HobbyLink. As our relationship progressed, the compliments from Sarah became fewer, and the backhanded comments started to creep in. It began subtly. You are always on that laptop, Mark. Don't you ever want to do something fun, like go shopping? Or, my friends are all dating guys with real careers. What are you even going to do with that app of yours? Her ambition was a powerful force, and it often felt like it dwarfed mine. She'd talk about climbing the corporate ladder, making 6 figures by her mid-20s, living in a penthouse. My dream of building a quirky app to connect stamp collectors felt small, almost pathetic, next to her grand visions, and she made sure I felt it. She'd compare me to her friends' boyfriends, who were already interning at big banks or law firms. They're so driven, Mark. Always hustling. You are just so comfortable. Comfortable became a dirty word. It implied lazy, unambitious, stuck. I started to feel like my app wasn't just a hobby. It was a constant point of tension, a symbol of my perceived inadequacy in her eyes. I tried to explain my passion, the satisfaction of creating something from nothing, the joy of seeing people connect through my early beta version. She'd nod vaguely, then pivot to her own achievements, her own plan. One particularly memorable instance was when I managed to get a small grant from a university innovation fund. It was only a couple of $1,000, enough to cover some server costs and pay for a few design assets. I was ecstatic. It was validation. I called Sarah, bubbling over with excitement. That's great, Mark, she said, her tone flat. A few $1,000s. That won't even cover a week of rent in a decent apartment, will it? I just closed a deal at my internship that brought in 10 times that for the company. Now that's real money. The air went out of my sails instantly. My achievement, which had felt monumental to me, was reduced to a pittance. It wasn't about the money for me, it was about the recognition, the belief in my idea. But to Sarah, money was the only measure of success. And by that measure, I was always coming up short. I started to hide my progress from her. I'd code late at night after she'd gone to sleep, or I'd work on it when she was out with her friends. It became a secret project, not just for the joy of creation, but to avoid her cutting remarks, her dismissive tone. The app, which started as a pure expression of my creativity, slowly morphed into a symbol of my defiance. a silent act of rebellion against her constant belittling. The more she devalued my efforts, the more I dug in. It was a strange dynamic. Her negativity, rather than crushing me completely, sometimes stoked a quiet fire within, a stubborn refusal to let her define my worth. But it was a constant battle, and her words chipped away at my confidence, leaving me feeling increasingly fragile. I started to internalize her judgments. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just a quiet guy with small dreams. Maybe I wasn't cut out for real success. The thought terrified me because she was becoming my world. Her approval was what I unconsciously sought, even as I resented her methods. I was slowly losing myself, becoming a shadow of the person I was before her, always trying to live up to her impossible standards. This quiet, insidious erosion of my self-esteem was far more damaging than any single argument. It built up over years, a slow poison. And I had no idea how much it had taken root until she finally pulled the plug on our relationship and on me. The insidious thing about emotional abuse is how it creeps up on you like a fog. You don't realize you are suffocating until you are already gasping for air. Sarah's put-down started small, almost disguised as constructive criticism. "You are so smart, Mark," she'd say, "but you just need to apply yourself more to things that actually matter." Or, "Your rap is charming, but it's not a real business. You need to think bigger." Over time, these subtle jabs became more direct. She'd mock my quiet nature. "Why are you so shy, Mark? Just speak up. Don't you want people to notice you?" If I tried to explain my introversion, she'd dismiss it. "It's just an excuse. You need to put yourself out there." She made me feel like my personality, the very core of who I was a flaw that needed fixing. Her words had a way of shrinking my world. I stopped sharing my small triumphs with friends because I was afraid they'd see them as insignificant, just like Sarah did. I started to second-guess every decision, every idea. My confidence plummeted. I became withdrawn, even more so than before I met her. The irony was, she used to tell me she liked my quiet, thoughtful side. Now it was a defect. The app became my secret refuge. It was the one place where I felt competent, where my ideas had value. While she was out networking or studying for her business exams, I was in my room, lost in lines of code, building something I believed in. It was my silent rebellion. Every successful feature, every positive comment from an early user felt like a small victory against her dismissive attitude. But even those victories were tinged with sadness, because I couldn't share them with the person I was supposed to be closest to. Her control extended beyond my app. She'd dictate what clothes I should wear, what music I should listen to, even what kind of movies we watched. If I expressed a preference, she'd scoff. "Oh, Mark, you have such terrible taste." "Just trust me on this." I let her. I wanted her to be happy. I wanted her to be happy. I wanted her to love me. And I believed deep down that if I just changed enough, if I became more like the person she wanted me to be, then she would truly value me, my best friend Alex noticed. Alex was always straightforward, never minced words. He'd known me since elementary school, seen me through my awkward phases and my triumphs. One day, after Sarah had made a particularly cutting remark about my career prospects in front of him, Alex pulled me aside. "Dude," he said, his brow furrowed with concern, "what's going on with you? You seem smaller. And Sarah? She's always putting you down, don't you see it?" I got defensive. "No, she's just trying to push me to be better. She has high standards." Alex sighed. "Here is a difference between high standards and constantly tearing someone down. She makes you feel like you are not good enough, Mark, and honestly, she's trying to make you dependent on her." His words hit me like a splash of cold water, but I immediately tried to deflect them. It was easier to defend Sarah than to admit that I was trapped in a relationship that was slowly eroding my spirit. "You don't understand, Alex. She loves me." "Does she?" he challenged, his eyes softening. "Or does she love having someone she can control?" I walked away from that conversation feeling a mix of anger and unease. Anger at Alex for daring to criticize Sarah, and unease because a part of me, a tiny, terrified part, knew he was right. But the thought of leaving her, of being nothing, as she often implied I would be without her, was more terrifying than staying. She had convinced me that my life was better with her, that I was incapable of navigating the world alone. "You are so naive, Mark," she'd say. "You need me to handle the practical stuff. You'd get eaten alive out there." I started to believe. I relied on her for social planning, for financial advice, for almost everything outside of my coding bubble. It was a subtle, invisible cage, built brick by brick, comment by comment, until I couldn't see the exit. One time, I had a meeting with a small local tech incubator. They were interested in HobbyLink, thought it had potential, and wanted me to pitch it. I was nervous but excited. When I told Sarah, she rolled her eyes. "An incubator? Mark, that's just a bunch of wannabes. They won't give you any real money. You are wasting your time. You should be looking for a proper job, something with a salary and benefits. Something that can support a future." I went to the meeting anyway, but her words had already done their damage. I pitched half-heartedly, feeling the weight of her judgment, convinced that it was indeed a waste of time. The meeting didn't go anywhere. I told myself it was because my app wasn't good enough, not because my confidence had been shattered before I even walked in the door. This pattern repeated itself again and again. Every time I reached for something, every time I tried to step outside the box she had built for me, she would be there, subtly or overtly, to cut me down, to remind me of my perceived inadequacies. It made me afraid to try. It made me afraid to fail. And most of all, it made me afraid to be alone, because she had convinced me that alone I was truly nothing. The feeling of utter worthlessness had become my constant companion, a heavy cloak I wore every day. I was waiting for the inevitable. The day she would finally decide I wasn't even worth controlling anymore. And that day came brutally, unexpectedly, and with words that would haunt me for years. The breakup wasn't a slow burn, it was an explosion. It happened on a Tuesday evening, a night that had started like any other. We were having dinner, a takeout meal I'd picked up. Sarah was scrolling through her phone, barely looking up. I tried to talk about my day, about a small bug I'd fixed in the app that had been bothering me for weeks. She grunted in response. "Sarah," I finally said, a little frustration seeping into my voice, "could you at least pretend to listen?" She slammed her phone down on the table, her eyes flashing. "Pretend? Mark, I am tired of pretending. I am tired of your boring stories about lines of code and your little app that goes nowhere. I am tired of you." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What are you talking about?" "I am talking about our life," she yelled, standing up. "It's stagnant. It's dull. You are dull. You have no ambition, no drive. You just sit there, day in and day out, glued to that screen. You never want to go out. You never want to try new things. You are holding me back." My mind raced, trying to keep up. Holding her back? I had always tried to support her, to be there for her. "I thought we were happy," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. She laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "Happy, Mark? I've been bored out of my mind for months, years even. I need someone who challenges me, someone who inspires me, someone who inspires me. Someone who actually does something with their life. Not someone who tinkers with a silly little project that will never amount to anything. Her voice rose, becoming shrill. I am tired of being your cheerleader for nothing. I am tired of waiting for you to grow up, to get a real job, to be someone. You are just a quiet, timid guy with a pipe dream. You'll never make it. You are too soft, too afraid. I felt a cold dread spread through me, numbing my limbs. It was like every criticism, every belittling comment she'd ever made, was coalescing into this single devastating moment. You think you can just survive on that little hobby of yours? She sneered, pointing at my laptop, which sat innocently on the desk in the corner. Newsflash, Mark. The world doesn't care about your little niche interests. It cares about power, money, influence, and you have none of that. You have no network, no connections, no drive. She took a step closer, her face contorted with anger or maybe disgust. You know what, Mark? I've wasted enough of my time on you. I deserve better. I deserve someone who can actually keep up with me. And then she delivered the final blow, the words that would echo in my mind for the next 2 years, the ones that became my curse and, eventually, my fuel. Her voice dropped to a chilling whisper, devoid of all warmth. You'd be nothing without me, Mark. Absolutely nothing. A nobody. A loser with a silly little project that goes nowhere. You can't even function on your own. You are too weak. You'll crumble. She grabbed her purse, her keys, and marched to the door. I just stood there, paralyzed, unable to move, unable to speak. My world was shattering around me, piece by agonizing piece. Don't bother calling, she said, pulling the door open. I am done. And then, she was gone. The door clicked shut, leaving me in the deafening silence of my small apartment. I sank to the floor, my legs giving out. The takeout food lay untouched on the table, growing cold. The silence was overwhelming, punctuated only by the frantic beat of my own heart. I felt hollowed out, empty. She had stripped away every layer of confidence I had, every shred of self-worth. And now she was gone, leaving me with the chilling prophecy that I would be nothing. For days, I didn't leave the apartment. I barely ate, barely slept. Alex called, but I didn't answer. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words over and over. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy, I thought. She had been the only one who saw any potential in me, even if it was just to mold me into someone else. Now that she was gone, what was left? The thought of working on HobbyLink, the app that had been both my refuge and a source of her scorn, was unbearable. It felt tainted. It felt like the very thing that had driven her away. Pushed my laptop aside, covered it with a blanket, as if to bury the evidence of my failure. The silence of the apartment, once a comfort, became a torment. Every shadow seemed to mock me, every dust bunny a testament to my inability to even maintain my own living space. I was utterly, completely lost. Pain was physical, a constant ache in my chest, a knot in my stomach. I truly believed her. I believed I was nuts. I believed I was too weak, too quiet, too unambitious to survive on my own. She had been the anchor, albeit a toxic one, and now I was adrift in a vast, terrifying ocean. My biggest fear had come true. I was alone, and I felt utterly worthless. This was my rock bottom, the lowest I had ever been, and from that dark, desolate place, an ember almost imperceptibly would begin to glow. Not of hope, not yet, but of pure, unadulterated defiance. Rock bottom isn't a comfortable place. It's cold, dark, and utterly desolate. For weeks after Sarah left, I barely functioned. The apartment became a tomb. I didn't shower, barely ate. She was a restless, fragmented thing, haunted by her voice, by her parting words. You'd be nothing without me, it echoed in every corner of my mind. Alex finally broke through my self-imposed isolation. He showed up at my door uninvited, probably after I ignored his 15th call. Took one look at me, unshaven, eyes hollow, surrounded by trash, and didn't say a word. He just walked past me, started picking up the pizza boxes, clearing the space. He didn't pity me, he just acted. He brewed coffee, strong and black, and forced a mug into my trembling hand. "Okay, Mark," he said, his voice firm but kind. "This ends now. You can mourn, but you can't self-destruct." He stayed for hours talking, not about Sarah, but about me. About who I was before her, about my passion for tech, for building things. He reminded me of the excitement I used to have, the way my eyes would light up when I talked about a new coding challenge. "Remember Hobby Link?" he asked, pointing to my laptop still hidden under the blanket. "That thing you poured your heart into, that was yours, Mark, not hers. It was about you." I flinched. "It's nothing," I mumbled, still believing her word. "It's not nothing," Alex countered, his voice rising slightly. "It's a testament to your quiet brilliance." She hated it because she couldn't control it, couldn't take credit for it. It was too you. His words, simple and direct, slowly began to chip away at the concrete shell around my heart. He didn't tell me what to do, but he reminded me of who I was, or at least who I used to be. He planted a seed of doubt about Sarah's narrative. Maybe she wasn't right. Maybe I wasn't nothing. The next few days were still a blur of pain, but a tiny flicker of defiance began to ignite. I started by just uncovering my laptop. Then I opened it. I stared at the code for HobbyLink, line after line. It looked alien, a relic from a different life. But then a thought sparked. What if? What if I proved her wrong? Not for her, but for me. To claw back a shred of my own identity. That spark became a small flame. The first step was just getting out of bed consistently. Then showering. Then eating something other than cold pizza. It was excruciatingly slow. Every small act of self-care felt like a monumental effort against the crushing weight of depression. But then, I opened the development environment for HobbyLink. I looked at the old code, saw the bugs I'd left, the features I'd abandoned, and something shifted. The familiar puzzle, the challenge of making something work, began to pull me in. I started small, fixing a broken link, optimizing a database query. It was mundane work, but it was my work. It was something Sarah had mocked, something she had dismissed as useless. And in doing it, I felt a tiny surge of power. This was mine. She couldn't touch this. The app became my therapy. Every line of code was a rebuttal to her words. Every late night a silent scream of defiance. I poured all my pain, all my anger, all my raw, bruised emotion into HobbyLink. Instead of wallowing, I channeled it. When a bug frustrated me, I imagined Sarah's sneer, and it pushed me to find the solution. When I felt like giving up, her voice would whisper, "Nothing," and I'd double down. I stopped thinking about what she would say or what she would think. My focus narrowed to the app itself. How could I make it better? How could I make it truly useful for people who felt like outsiders? I remembered the early users, the handful of positive comments. They were my true audience, not Sarah. I started to connect with online communities of developers, learning new frameworks, new languages. I was hungry for knowledge, for growth. It wasn't about proving anything to Sarah anymore, not entirely. It was about proving it to myself. About rediscovering the joy of creation, the satisfaction of solving complex problems. The apartment was still a mess, but I didn't care. All that mattered was the screen in front of me, the lines of code scrolling by, the vision of HobbyLink becoming something real, something vibrant. The hours blurred, days turned into nights, nights into days. My social life disappeared, but I didn't feel lonely. I felt a sense of purpose, a fierce determination that I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just building an app, I was rebuilding myself. Each feature I added, each bug I crushed, was a brick in the foundation of my new self-worth. The silence of the apartment, once a torment, became a sanctuary for my intense focus. It was just me and the code, a symbiotic relationship where one nurtured the other. I was transforming the emotional wreckage of my past into fuel for my future. It was a painful, solitary journey, but with every passing day, the shadow of Sarah's words grew a little fainter, replaced by the quiet hum of my laptop and the growing belief that maybe, just maybe, I could be something after all. The first glimmer of real success for HobbyLink wasn't a sudden explosion, but a slow, steady burn. After months of working in isolation, pouring my heart and soul into the app, I decided it was finally robust enough for a wider release. I launched it on a small indie app store and posted about it in a few niche online forums. And then things started to happen. Slowly at first. A few downloads here, a positive comment there. Users started finding each other, forming small communities around incredibly specific interests. Vintage typewriter enthusiasts, amateur meteorite hunters, people who knitted sweaters for garden gnomes. It was exactly what I had envisioned. The user number began to climb, not exponentially, but consistently. The App Store reviews were overwhelmingly positive. People loved the concept, the clean interface, the fact that it catered to their weird hobbies. Finally, a place where I belong. One review read. Another said, "This app changed my life. I found someone who shares my passion for competitive bird watching." Each positive review, each new download notification was a small victory. It was external validation, something Sarah had always denied me. But even with these small wins, the ghost of her words still lingered. A few bucks online, still not enough to take me to that fancy restaurant. I was making money, yes, but it was still only enough to cover the server costs and maybe buy myself a better coffee machine. It wasn't 8 figures money, not yet. I found myself still measuring my success against her impossible standards, against the shadow of her dismissive sneers. Would she still call it a silly little project now? Would she still say it goes nowhere? The validation I craved wasn't just about the app's success. It was about proving her wrong. And that desire, while a powerful motivator, was also a heavy weight. There were moments of doubt, even amidst the growing success. An unexpected surge in traffic would crash a server, leading to frantic, sleepless nights debugging. A negative review would sting more than it should, pulling me back into the vortex of self-doubt. "This app is useless," one user wrote after a crash. And instantly Sarah's voice would echo, "Goes nowhere." I'd stare at my screen, exhausted, questioning everything. Was I good enough? Was this all just a fluke? Was I destined to remain a nobody despite these small victories? The emotional scars were deep, and success, even genuine success, didn't magically erase them. It felt fragile, like it could all crumble at any moment, leaving me back in the nothing she promised. Alex, ever the supportive friend, was the only one I shared these vulnerabilities with. He saw past the growing user numbers and sensed the lingering insecurity. "Mark," he said during one of our rare coffee meetups, "you are doing great. Look at what you've built. People love it. Why do you still look like you are fighting a losing battle?" I confessed, it's her. I keep thinking, is this enough to prove her wrong? And then I realize it probably never will be. And that scares me, because it means her words still have power over me. Alex nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's not about proving her wrong, dude. It's about proving yourself right. That you are not nothing. That you have value. That you can build something amazing. And you are. You really are." His words were a balm. It was a subtle shift in perspective, but a crucial one. It wasn't about Sarah's validation, but about my own. About reclaiming my narrative. I started to focus less on what she would think, and more on the users themselves. I spent hours reading their feedback, responding to their questions, helping them connect. Their genuine enthusiasm, their stories of finding friends and communities through HobbyLink, became the new fuel. It was a purer, more fulfilling motivation than spite. I introduced new features based on user requests. Private messaging, a dedicated forum for each hobby group, event planning tool. The app grew organically, driven by the needs and desires of its users. I was learning on the fly, constantly adapting, constantly improving. It was exhilarating, challenging, and profoundly satisfying. There were still hard days, days where the code wouldn't compile, or a new competitor emerged, or I felt overwhelmed by the sheer scale of what I was trying to do by myself. In those moments, Sarah's voice would still creep in, a phantom limb of my past. "You can't do this alone, Mark. You are too weak." But then I'd look at the growing user base, the thousands of people finding connection through my creation, and a quiet resolve would settle in. I was doing it alone, and I wasn't nothing. I was Mark, the guy who built HobbyLink, the guy who was quietly changing lives, one niche hobby at a time. The real test, however, was yet to come. The bigger challenges, the ones that would truly determine if HobbyLink was just a silly project or something much, much more. As HobbyLink grew, so did the challenges. The early quiet success was replaced by the intense pressure of scaling. What started as a labor of love became a legitimate business, demanding more than just my coding skills. My little server, once perfectly adequate, was now buckling under the weight of thousands of new users signing up daily. I was constantly battling crashes, slow load times, and frustrated messages from users. I spent even more sleepless nights, but these weren't fueled by raw defiance. They were fueled by a desperate need to keep the app alive, to maintain the trust of its burgeoning community. I was learning about server architecture, database optimization, and cloud infrastructure on the fly. Felt like I was building a skyscraper with a set of toy blocks. Funding became a major issue. I was reinvesting every penny I made from the app back into its operations, but it wasn't enough. I needed serious capital to hire help, to upgrade my tech, to market effectively. This meant facing the very world Sarah had always claimed I was too timid to navigate. The world of investors. I prepared pitches, practiced my delivery, and tried to project an air of confidence I often didn't feel. I went to networking events, forcing myself to make small talk, to shake hands, to articulate my vision to skeptical strangers. Each meeting was an ordeal. I remembered Sarah's dismissive remarks about real business and power, money, influence. She had made me believe I was incapable of operating in that arena. My first few investor meetings were a disaster. I was nervous, fumbled my words, and probably undersold my own creation. Interesting niche, one investor said, barely hiding his condescension. But what's the market size for competitive cheese rolling, really? He echoed Sarah's exact words from years ago, right down to the tone. It was a punch to the gut. I felt that familiar wave of self-doubt wash over me. She was right. I am not cut out for this. I walked out of that meeting feeling defeated, convinced I was still the nothing she described. I called Alex almost in tears. It's hopeless, man. They don't see it. They just see a toy. Alex listened patient. Mark, one rejection isn't the end of the world. It's part of the game. Get back up. Learn from it. You believe in HobbyLink, right? Then make them believe in it. He reminded me that my passion, my authenticity was my greatest strength. I wasn't a shark. I was a builder. I loved connecting people. That was my story. So I tried again. I refined my pitch, focusing more on the human connection aspect, the power of community, the untapped market of underserved hobbyists. I also started working with a pro bono mentor from a small business development center, someone who saw the potential in my idea and helped me frame my business plan more effectively. There were still rejections, but they started to sting less. Each no was a lesson, not a condemnation. I learned to read the room, to anticipate questions, to address concerns about market size by highlighting engagement and retention rates. Then one sunny afternoon, something happened that jolted me. I was walking through a busy downtown park, heading to yet another investor meeting, when I saw her. Sarah. She was sitting on a park bench, laughing with a group of impeccably dressed people, all of them looking like they'd stepped out of a business magazine. She looked stunning, confident, exactly as I remembered her. Her laugh, once so captivating, now sounded distant and cold. Our eyes met. Just for a second. Her smile faltered, a flicker of recognition, then something unreadable. Was it surprise? Confusion? I couldn't tell. She didn't wave, didn't nod. She just held my gaze for a fleeting moment, then quickly turned back to her friends. Her laughter, a little too loud, a little too forced. I kept walking, my heart pounding. It was the first time I'd seen her since the breakup. The encounter was so brief, so unintentional, but it hit me hard. A fresh wave of old insecurities washed over me. Did I look successful? Did I look like nothing? My clothes were casual, my hair a bit messy from a rushed morning. I didn't look like the polished corporate type she was with. The urge to go back, to shout, "Look at me now," was overwhelming. To scream, "I am not nothing, I built something real." But I didn't. I kept walking. The meeting was important. I sat in the waiting room of the investor firm, my hands clammy. Her face still burned into my mind. I was filled with a familiar mix of fear and defiance. But this time, something new happened. Instead of letting her image paralyze me, I channeled it. I thought about her words. "You'd be nothing without me." I thought about her dismissing my app. And then I thought about all the users who loved HobbyLink, all the hours I'd poured into it, the personal growth I'd experienced. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about me, and the vision I had for this app. When I finally walked into the conference room, I felt a new kind of power, not aggression, but quiet confidence. I wasn't pitching to prove her wrong. I was pitching to build my future. I spoke with clarity, passion, and conviction. I highlighted the unique community, the high engagement, the genuine need it filled. I showed them testimonials from real users. I don't know if it was my improved pitch, or a shift in the market, or just pure luck. But this time it was different. This time they listened, and they didn't laugh. The meeting that day was with a group called Horizon Ventures. Unlike the previous, condescending investors, these people seemed genuinely interested. They asked smart questions, listened intently, and didn't dismiss the niche aspect of HobbyLink. They saw the value in a highly engaged, passionate user base, even if it wasn't a billion-dollar general social media platform. They saw the human connection, the growing community. I left that meeting feeling cautiously optimistic, but still wary. I had been burned before. I kept working on HobbyLink, improving features, battling server issues, nurturing the community. Weeks passed, then a month. I almost forgot about Horizon Ventures, assuming it was another dead end. Then the email arrived. It was from Horizon. They wanted a second meeting, and then a third. Each time the conversations grew more serious, more detailed. They brought in their technical experts, their marketing strategists. They dug deep into HobbyLink's code, its user data, its potential. I shared everything transparently. I had nothing to hide and nothing to lose. During one of these meetings, they asked me a question that stopped me cold. Mark, what's your ultimate vision for HobbyLink? If money were no object, where would you take? I paused, thinking about all those late nights, all those dreams I'd barely dared to whisper. I wanted to be the definitive platform for passionate communities, I said, my voice gaining strength. Place where anyone, no matter how obscure their interest, can find their people, share their knowledge and feel like they belong. I want to build a team, a whole ecosystem around supporting these unique passions. I wanted to be more than just an app. I wanted to be a movement. I saw a subtle nod from their lead partner, a seasoned tech veteran named Eleanor Vance. She had a keen, intelligent gaze that missed nothing. That's a powerful vision, Mark, she said. And we believe you are the one to make it happen. The words hum in the air. We believe you are the one. It was the opposite of everything Sarah had ever told me. A few days later, my phone rang. It was Eleanor Vance. Mark, she said, her voice calm and professional. We've been very impressed with you and with HobbyLink. We believe it has incredible potential. We'd like to make you an offer. My heart leaped into my throat. An offer? Yes, she continued. We're prepared to acquire HobbyLink outright. We believe with our resources we can help you scale it to its full potential, reach millions of users and truly build that movement you envision. And then she said the number. The figure. 8 figures. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. My mind reeled. It was so much so, astronomically much, more money than I could ever spend. More money than Sarah had ever dreamed of, even with her real jobs and real careers. I mumbled something incoherent, trying to process it. Is that for me? Personally? Eleanor chuckled softly. Yes, Mark, that's for you. And we want you to stay on as the head of product, to continue leading the vision and development. You built this, and we want you to see it through. I hung up the phone, my hand still shaking. I stared at the wall, the same blank wall I'd stared at 2 years ago when Sarah walked out, when I felt like nothing. Now, on that very same wall, I almost saw the glow of that 8-figure number. It was surreal. It was impossible. Yet it was real. The weight of it was immense. Not just the money, but the validation. This wasn't a small grant or a few positive reviews. This was a major tech firm with serious money, recognizing the value of my silly little project, recognizing my value. I remembered the countless hours, the sacrifices, the despair, the defiance, the taste of instant coffee at 3 a.m., the frustration of debugging complex errors, the stinging words of Sarah, "You'd be nothing without me." And here I was. Something Something huge. I had built it. All of it. Alone. Fueled by spite, yes, but, more importantly, fueled by a rediscovered passion and a deep, quiet belief in myself. The immediate feeling wasn't euphoria. It was a strange, dizzying mix of triumph, disbelief, and a profound sense of closure. The long, agonizing chapter of self-doubt, of being defined by someone else's toxic words, was finally, irrevocably closed. The financial security was a game changer, of course, but the deeper impact was on my spirit. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the proof. Proof that I wasn't nothing. Proof that I could build, I could create, I could succeed. Not despite being myself, but because of it. Quiet, dedicated programmer had just built a multi-million-dollar company. The irony was almost too much to bear, and I realized, standing there in my small, suddenly monumental apartment, that the real victory wasn't the money, but the quiet, undeniable truth that Sarah's words were a lie. A total, complete, and utterly baseless lie. The days after the offer were a blur of lawyers, contracts, and financial advisors. It was exhilarating and overwhelming. The feeling of the paperwork being finalized, the money hitting my bank account, it was less a sudden burst of joy and more a profound, quiet hum of disbelief. It was real. 8 figures. I still lived in my old apartment for a few weeks. It felt strangely comforting, a reminder of the journey. Old worn chair, the tiny kitchen, the same window looking out onto the city. It was the backdrop for my lowest lows and my greatest triumphs. It grounded me. The news of the acquisition wasn't public immediately. There was a quiet period a few weeks before the press release went out. I told Alex first, of course. His reaction was pure, unadulterated joy. He jumped up, whooped, and then tackled me in a celebratory hug. "I knew it, man," he yelled, laughing. "I knew you had it in you. You proved everyone wrong, especially her." His words, "especially her," hung in the air. Part of me, the old wounded part, still craved that external validation from Sarah. I wondered what she would do, what she would say when the news broke. Would she regret her words? Would she try to reach out? The thought gnawed at me. The money bought freedom, yes, but it didn't instantly erase the scars. The desire for her to see, to acknowledge, to somehow understand the depth of her error was still there, a lingering ghost. Then the press release went out. It was picked up by all the major tech news sites. Indie developer. Sells niche app for 8 figures. Stays on to lead vision. My name, my photo were everywhere. It was surreal. My phone started blowing up almost immediately. Boo if form old classmates, distant relatives, even some people I hadn't spoken to in years. Congratulatory messages, questions about the money, requests for advice. I ignored most of them, but then a familiar name popped up on my screen. Sarah, a text message. Simple. "Mark, is this true?" My heart slammed against my ribs. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. What do I say? Do I gloat? Do I ignore her? Do I tell her off? All the pain, all the anger, all the years of feeling nothing rushed back. This was my moment. I typed out a message, then deleted it. Typed another, then deleted that too. I wanted to unleash years of pent-up rage. I wanted to rub her face in it. I wanted her to feel even a fraction of the pain she had inflicted on me. Then I paused. I looked around my apartment, no longer a tomb but a launching pad. I thought about the journey, the late nights, the defiance, the quiet, painstaking work of rebuilding myself. I thought about Alex's words. It's not about proving her wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And I realized something profound. Her words, her opinion, her validation didn't matter anymore. I didn't need her to acknowledge my success for it to be real. My success was real because I had built it, despite her, for myself. So I typed one final message, short, simple, truthful. Yes, Sarah, it's true. I didn't hit send immediately. I stared at it. I thought about the power of those few words. They conveyed fact, not emotion. They didn't invite conversation or argument. They simply stated the truth, a truth that spoke volumes on its own. It was a mic drop without the drama. I hit send. Almost immediately my phone buzzed again. Another message from Sarah. I can't believe it. I always knew you had potential, Mark. I am so happy for you. I always knew you had potential. The words felt like a slap, a blatant rewriting of history. She had done everything to crush that potential, to make me believe it didn't exist. She was trying to claim a piece of my victory, trying to mend a bridge she had burned to ashes. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Her words were hollow, meaningless. The power she once held over me had vanished. The desire for her recognition, once a burning need, had finally, definitively extinguished. It was a strange feeling, not total satisfaction, because the pain of the past was still a part of me, a deep scar. But it was peace, a profound sense of release. I was free. Free from her words, free from her need to prove anything to anyone but myself. The 8 figures in my bank account were great, but the real treasure was the quiet dignity I had reclaimed. I was Mark, the builder, the survivor, the man who had faced nothing and built an empire from it. And that, finally, was enough. The weeks and months after the acquisition were a whirlwind. I moved into a bigger, brighter apartment, but I kept my old, worn office chair. It felt like a trophy, a reminder of where I came from. I assembled a small, brilliant team for HobbyLink. People who shared my vision and passion for community. We worked hard, scaling the app, adding new features, and seeing the user base explode beyond anything I'd imagined. The money, while life-changing, didn't transform me into a different person overnight. I didn't buy a flashy car or a mansion. I invested wisely, ensuring long-term security, and set aside funds for causes I believed in, especially those supporting independent creators and mental health awareness. I knew firsthand the toll that self-doubt and emotional abuse could take. My relationship with Alex deepened. He was there through it all, the unwavering friend who saw me when I couldn't see myself. We often just sat in comfortable silence, or talked about trivial things, a stark contrast to the intense, draining conversations I'd had with Sarah. He was a reminder that true support is quiet, consistent, and unconditional. Dating was a new frontier. I met wonderful people, but I was cautious. The scars from Sarah still made me wary, afraid of vulnerability, afraid of allowing someone new to chip away at the self-worth I had so painstakingly rebuilt. I learned to recognize red flags, to listen to my gut. I also learned to value quiet strength and genuine kindness, qualities I had once dismissed in my pursuit of Sarah's dazzling, but ultimately destructive personality. One evening, about a year after the acquisition, I found myself sitting on my new comfortable couch, scrolling through HobbyLink. I saw posts from users in Argentina discussing antique maps, from a group in Japan comparing rare orchid species, from a community in Germany organizing a meetup for competitive knitting. It was alive, thriving, connecting people across the globe. A profound sense of gratitude washed over me, not just for the success, but for the journey. for the pain that had in a twisted way become the crucible for my growth. Sarah's cruel words, "You'd be nothing without me," no longer held power. They were just a memory, a distant echo. I wasn't nothing. I was more than I had ever dared to dream. I was a creator, a leader, a survivor. I had built something meaningful, something that brought joy and connection to thousands. And I had done it on my own terms, driven by my own passion, not by external validation or spite. The hearth-breaking part of the story wasn't just the breakup itself or the toxic word. It was the realization that even immense success doesn't instantly erase deep emotional wounds. The ache remains, a phantom limb of past pain. But it dulls over time. It becomes a reminder, not a torment. I found my worth not in the 8 figures in my bank account, but in the process of reclaiming myself. The money was simply the ultimate external validation of that internal journey. Provided security, sure, but the true wealth was the self-belief I had forged in the fire of adversity. I often think about what my life would have been like if I had never met Sarah, or if she hadn't left me. Would I have built HobbyLink with the same intensity? Would I have pushed through the immense challenges? Perhaps not. Her negativity, while destructive, had also, in a strange, painful way, served as a catalyst. Forced me to confront my own weaknesses, to dig deep, and to discover a resilience I never knew I possessed. I wasn't the same quiet, insecure guy who met Sarah years ago. I was still quiet, yes, but now I had a quiet strength. I still loved coding, but now I built with purpose and confidence. I was comfortable in my own skin, no longer seeking external approval to define my worth. The story wasn't about getting revenge. It wasn't about making Sarah regret her words, although I knew deep down that she probably did. It was about my own journey from nothing to something. And the most important lesson I learned was that something wasn't a number in a bank account. It was the quiet, unwavering belief in myself, forged in the fires of adversity and nurtured by the simple act of building. The app was sold, the money was in. But the real triumph was the man I had become, whole and complete, finally free.